You are listening to the One Day at a Time Recovery Podcast. On this podcast, my guests share their stories of alcoholism, addiction, and how they recovered so that you can too. My hope is that you find the inspiration and resources you need to let go of what's holding you back so that you can transform into the person you were always meant to be. Ready? Here we go. Hey friend, thank you for downloading the episode. My name is Arlena and I'll be your host. So what do you do when you feel like you've tried absolutely everything to get sober? Meetings every day, church every Sunday, Bible study every Tuesday, even begging your probation officer to put you in prison and nothing works? It's an experience that so many of us had, and I'm here to tell you there's hope. Today I sit down with Adam Gunton, bestselling author and founder of the nonprofit Recovered on Purpose, who shares his story of addiction and what finally helped him achieve long-term sobriety. We talk a lot about God in this episode, so I'm just going to ask you to keep an open mind if that's a sore spot for you. In this episode, you'll learn why a decade of 12-step meetings still left Adam unable to stay sober and what the critical missing piece was. We're going to talk about how to find the right sponsor, why people like Adam literally die without the 12 steps being done quickly and rigorously, and how to come to terms and make sense of what God actually means for you. One more thing before we jump in. If you want to quit drinking, but you keep running into obstacles, please reach out to me. I'm here to support you. You don't need to hire me to be your coach to talk to me. In fact, I'm not taking clients right now. But if you just want to share your current situation and get some feedback, or maybe you just need some resources, you could put some time on my calendar by visiting soberlifeschool.com. So without further delay, please enjoy this episode with Adam. Adam, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about your TED Talk. You have the craziest body cam footage of yourself. We'll have to put that somewhere, but that's wild that you have that. But I like to start with a little game I call the lightning round, which is actually very slow. But it'll be fun. It'll front load the episode with some resources. When you first got sober, were there any books that really helped you early on?
Big book of AA
Yeah.
and the Bible. Yeah.
Big book and Bible, the bees. The bees are
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you go through a faith-based recovery?
Nope, I never found treatment. That's actually why I'm doing what I do now.
Oh,
I'm on the floor of a trap house on Christmas Day alone, calling treatment centers trying to get help and not being able to find it. So I never got into treatment.
wow, that's crazy, especially with all the amount of rehabs there are.
Yeah.
That's wild. Do you have a go-to mantra or quote that you live by?
My mantra is everything I do is for an audience of one. And the way that I think about it is that someday I'm going to get to answer for everything that I do. And I get to answer. Like when I see somebody on the street that nobody's even talking to, just me stopping, smiling, touching their shoulder, saying, hey,
Yeah.
8.5 years ago, I was homeless. I was just having that. Someday I'm going to see what that interaction meant to that person.
Uh, I love that. That reminds me, a buddy of mine was going around San Francisco with a sign that said free hugs. And I remember when people were doing that a while ago. It was a while ago.
Yeah.
But he said he hugged this homeless guy and he says, nobody has touched me in years.
Yeah.
I could see just how a simple hand on the shoulder, just human connection, could mean so much to somebody who feels ostracized.
Yeah. So I actually went to this little event. It was like this Christian entrepreneur event, met one of the speakers there and was talking to her. And she asked, like, how do we help people that are on the street? Because I don't want to give money and this and that. And I'm like, you don't have to. The biggest thing you can do is just touch them. Even a hand on the shoulder, a hug,
Mhm.
handshake. People don't do that with us. And then I ended up seeing her 6 months later. Apparently, her husband is the pastor of a big church. She started that, started seeing the impact it was having in her community on the people that normally you don't go up and hug and stuff. And then
Mhm.
her husband ended up doing a whole message on it and having the whole church going out and doing that. And the impact is huge.
Wow.
That's kind of what I was talking about with my mantra. I didn't tell her that thinking, I hope she tells her whole congregation. I did it because I know it's the right thing and that God is watching that kind of stuff. And he was.
Yeah. And yeah, that's turning your mess into a message, that's for sure.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that. When it comes to recovery, do you have a self-care routine? That could be like a morning practice. Maybe you attend a certain number of meetings a week or go to a retreat. What does that look like for you?
More than 40 days ago, before I had a newborn.
That's right. You have a baby. Dude, all bets are off when you have a little dictator in your house.
Yeah.
A diaper dictator.
Yeah. I learned early on, like even when I was struggling, because I was in the rooms trying for almost a decade and wasn't
Yeah.
able to pull 30 days together. And I learned early on that it's not meetings that get or keep me sober, but it's helping other men go through the 12 steps and sometimes women. But I usually find men and then I rigorously work on the 12 steps with them. And then I carry it into everything I do. Like that's my recovery is that I'm no longer that person that was struggling with drugs and alcohol. I'm a
Mhm.
person living on a spiritual playing field with God, doing my absolute best,
Mhm.
who happens to fail every day at something, but I'm okay with it now.
Yeah.
I don't have to shoot up because I'm a failure anymore.
Oh, that's a big one. Yeah. I think when our self-esteem is so low, any mistake feels the magnitude just feels exponentially big.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you've been sober over 8 years now? Is that right?
8.5, November 6th, 2017.
Nice. Congratulations. What is the one thing you wish you would have known right from the beginning?
That's what's so interesting is like whenever I think about that, I wouldn't want to change any part of my path in recovery. There have been a lot of things that I've had to think about. Oh, I wish I would. No, I don't. Because if I could go back and never use drugs, I think I would because it caused a totally different trajectory. In recovery, I had to work so hard. I had to work so hard to get to where I am now. And
Yeah.
it was it wasn't work hard in a negative context. I wouldn't go back with any kind of knowledge to make it easier on myself because the point of it was that I was working and learning the whole time and it was you don't have to have it all figured out and you're never going to. So maybe that's what I would tell him.
Yeah, that makes sense to me because what you're describing is the experience. Working hard is like exercise. It's growing pains. It's good for you. There are certain efforts, exertions that we have that benefit us. I can see why you're like, nah, I wouldn't
Yeah.
change that. I worked really hard and you get the benefits from that.
Yeah.
Makes total sense to me. You know what's funny is I've been forgetting to ask this question, but it came up recently where we talk about God shots, right? God intervening and something crazy happening. And it feels like we need to share more of those stories. Does anything come to mind for you?
It happens so often. I feel like a God shot is the way that I live now. Even my wife, I told her very early on in our relationship that it's really hard to be around me for very long without starting to notice God all over. Because when you're listening and you're like doing, because sometimes he'll tell you to do something that doesn't make sense. But if you
Mm,
learn how to listen and do it anyway, that's where the window opens to actually see how he works. He works outside of our understanding of why he's telling us to take that next step. And then that's what a God shot is like taking the next step and then seeing how, oh, he was trying to introduce me to this person right here. It happens all the time.
and listen, I'm going to go off script a little bit, but learning how to, there's all this talk about seeking and doing God's will, and it's understanding and trying to figure out what that is. It can be really confusing for a lot of people,
Yeah.
right? Because we think that we know what we want, right? We're like, oh, I have this great idea, God. I have this great idea. I think you want me to do it. So I'm just going to, like a steamroller, go and do this. But sometimes I'm like banging my head against the wall and I'm like, is this God's will? It's
Yeah.
like sometimes things are hard and you just have to persist. So I think sometimes it's confusing. I want to work hard. I want to be persistent, but also I'm not sure if this is your will for me. Sometimes I just flat out ask, can you please just make this obvious?
Yeah.
Can you just make
Yeah.
it? I'm feeling especially slow today. Can you
Yep.
make your message clear? How do you think about that?
Yeah, one of my favorite prayers is if this is the way I'm supposed to go, make it a highway, open the door wide open. If it's not, shut the door in my face somehow. Make it obvious, right?
Yeah.
And I think that it's really that's what's so cool about God is it's a relationship. It's not like this esoteric outside of us, like trying to figure out, God, what is your will? It's a relationship with a person that can talk to us.
Yeah.
And when we hear his voice, we have to understand that's his voice. And it comes in, you get seeds of it. Because you'll get like a little thing. Hey, you see that person over there? They need a hug. And
Right.
you getting out of yourself and going up and hugging that person and saying, hey, I'm telling your story or something. Because you
Yeah.
had that intuitive, like prompting to go do it. That's when he starts giving you the big things. Hey, you see that person in that suit over there? Go introduce yourself. Ends up being a mayor or something. Because what he's doing is he's training you to trust me. And yes, you can go hug that person because then I can have you go talk to anybody at any time. And there's a growth to it. Like even now, still, my little mind argues. I don't know why. I don't know why. I still like because some of the things he tells me to do, I'm like, really? And then the way that I train this to sponsees and mentees, like people that aren't necessarily 12 steps, but I have them put your hands around your head like this. Okay. And you see how big your knowledge is? Like this? Now put your hand around the world.
Yeah.
You mean to tell me that your understanding is greater than God's, who understands the entire world plus.
That's a good visual for those that are just listening. Now you have to go watch the YouTube. That was awesome. I love that. I always like to kind of talk about how we got here. And I'm always super fascinated with family of origin. I feel like what happens in childhood sort of sets the stage. So, whatever you want to share about, like maybe what your parents did when you were growing up, number of siblings, where you grew up, anything that you feel is relevant.
I grew up in Littleton, Colorado. I was I was like a golden boy. I won state wrestling in Little League. We won state every year for football. Won state for baseball. I was the home run derby hitter at the Little League World Series in eighth grade.
Oh,
And then I went to a high school everybody's heard of. I went to Columbine High School,
okay.
and then it was actually like an excellent experience. Again, I was the defensive captain of my state championship football team my senior year at Columbine, and just had a blessed upbringing.
Hmm.
And the problem was that from 12 years old, I had a hidden habit because somebody introduced me to cocaine. And my
At
parents,
12?
yeah, my parents didn't know. And here I was also asked to skip a grade. I was a straight A student until I was in eighth grade, until cocaine hit the and
There's a
you
reason
know,
why drugs are illegal.
yeah, yeah. And I think that there was that's why I say if I could go back, I think I would go back and not use
Yeah.
cocaine at 12 years old. But
Yeah.
basically anything else, I can't blame that person because I've had to get to a place in my 12-step work where I fully understand that he was not doing it from a place of trying to hurt me.
Yeah.
And he was also a hurting person, right? And then I had to get to a place where I can ask myself, okay, at what point was it my responsibility to stop? At what point did I have full choice in what I was doing, hiding and sneaking around and not telling anybody? And then when somebody asked, I lied. At what point was it my responsibility? I guess I say all of that is relevant because that's how my addiction started, was I had this incredible environment around me with this hidden thing that was going on. And it spiraled as soon as I got out of the house.
This person that gave it to you, was it an adult?
21, 22. Yeah.
Wow, an adult. Okay. And we don't have to out this person, but yeah, that's pretty, yeah, that's messed up for sure. And you,
He didn't mean to hurt me.
okay, we might have to agree to disagree there.
Yeah, I know.
It's like,
Yeah.
what did you think was going to happen? You have 12-year-old cocaine.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate, though, that you are very much about taking personal responsibility because it's oftentimes people tell me these horrible stories and it's okay. Clearly, there's some trauma there, and 12 years old, it's not your fault. But at some point, it's like, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. Okay, so you started pretty young, and so you made it out of high school pretty much unscathed. Did you go to college?
I wouldn't say unscathed. I barely made it out of high school.
Yeah, yeah. All
Yeah.
right. So
And I think I basically made it out of high school because I was on the football team and captain and
you're
all
an
that stuff.
athlete.
Yeah.
Man, I can't tell you how many times I've heard people getting away with all kinds of stuff because they were an athlete.
Yeah. I don't think they knew the extent of stuff. It was just I didn't care about school anymore.
Mm.
No, from I had to go to a special school in fifth grade. In seventh grade, I had to go to high school for a few classes in the morning and then go back to middle school. And then at a certain point, when things weren't easy anymore, I have to learn calculus to do math now. Like, I'm not interested in that.
That
And then,
requires some effort.
yeah, exactly. And then at some point, I just stopped going or doing things. And then
Okay.
barely passed and graduated, but I graduated. And then I did technically went to college. Technically, yeah, but I kind of just went.
You mean you enrolled in college?
Yeah, and I went and I lived on campus and all that kind of stuff, but school wasn't my thing. I'll just put it that way.
Something else took precedence over school? Your priorities changed?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you know how in the rooms they talk about it was fun, fun with problems, and then just problems. Let's fast track to the just problems. What were some of the experiences that you had that you were like, yeah, this is really a problem?
That's you've heard of rock bottom, like when people say you got to let them hit rock bottom, right? I hit a rock bottom for sure in 2011, and I didn't get sober for another 6.5 years.
Wow.
There was a point where I was Mr. Popular, was on the list for any club I wanted to go to, was able to go to any like EDM show, VIP, and like all this stuff. And then somebody found out about my heroin habit. And then I got completely ostracized from everything, everybody. And then was in an apartment and loaded up a syringe with everything I had, wrote a note on like a suicide note on an iPad to my mom. It's,
Oh,
really it was a really bad suicide note too. And then shot that up and then woke up in the morning, it was still in my arm, dead arm. And then I just started screaming at God, why am I here? Why? I don't want to be here. I don't think that I was serious at that point though. I don't think that I just think that I was really out of control. I was really sad. I was really broken. I couldn't stop using. I wasn't at the point where like I really wanted to stop using, but I knew that I needed to stop using at that point. And then you would think that's rock bottom. But then a couple years later, I'm in a corporate housing apartment. I'm still housed because I can sell. I can knock doors and sell, so they will always house me and they will always pay me. And then again, I'm on the floor wanting to be gone, calling the CEO and quitting my job because if I still stay here, I'm gonna hurt myself. And then I found myself in a homeless shelter, and I'm like praying. I'm on my knees praying. I'm still using it at the time, and I'm looking around at these 36 other cots around, and then that's got to be rock bottom, right? Living in a homeless shelter. And then I got 86 from the homeless shelter. I remember a week after I got kicked out of the homeless shelter, I went back in line just to get lunch and got kicked out of the lunch line. So that has to be rock bottom.
yeah.
And for people like us, I think it can go as deep as we want. And it calls us, like us that are in recovery, it's not about how deep we went. It's about how high we can raise other people's bottom. It doesn't necessarily mean that somebody that's 23 years old and is blacking out and stuff doesn't mean that they will necessarily end up going down that same path that I went. But what I can tell them for sure, if you have what I have, whatever you're dealing with right now, it gets worse. 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So that's the message to people that are struggling with this thing that may not quite be there yet. You can save yourself a lot of pain.
You mentioned going to meetings for a long, like 12-step meetings, I'd imagine, for a long time. Where was the disconnect for you?
They were therapy sessions and not talks about God and the 12 steps. I don't think that anybody ever stopped me and told me I needed to do the 12 steps. I don't think that was the message I was hearing. I heard a lot about somebody's day and about the things that they're struggling with in life and make your bed, make a gratitude journal. I heard a lot of solutions that never worked for me. And I don't know. And maybe it works for some people to call your sponsor every day and tell them how your day was. Maybe that works for some people. I couldn't make it a few days in a row calling a sponsor sober, you know, telling him how my day was. When I started, I had to do these steps immediately.
Yeah.
I did steps one, two, three in day one. Day one. And then step four, I was done within a couple weeks, 2, 3 weeks. And that the only relief that I got during that time, like from withdrawals and cravings and sickness and all this stuff going on in my head, the only relief I would get was when I would sit down and actually write my inventory. Or I would sit across from my sponsor who was reading the book with me and doing the work with me. It's very,
Yeah.
the 12-step program and the work of the 12 steps, it's almost like a lot of the meetings that are happening now have let it go. People like me die without them. Shouldn't that be the message? Let's have a first step meeting. How did everybody get here? How is
Yeah.
that going to help? Okay, yeah, that's how I got here too. Now what? I'm going to go drink when I leave here. That was my experience. That was
So
my
you didn't find a sponsor that was like, we're gonna start working steps right away? You have
no,
to find
I
the right kind of sponsor.
nope. And even when I heard the message to do the steps quickly, I went to people that had 28, 32 years in the group that I was in at the time, and they said, "We do one step a month. Slow down. It's not a race, Adam." Yeah, it is. It absolutely is.
Yeah.
The person that sponsored me, you know how they say you have to find somebody that you relate with, find somebody that has what you want, all this stuff,
Mhm.
right? I went, I did that. That was the message, and I did that. I always looked for the guy that was strong, good looking, had the business, had the truck, had the gorgeous wife, that kind of stuff, the things that you want, right? And then I was even sponsored by a celebrity. Couldn't get me sober. The person that ended up sponsoring me to sobriety had never sponsored anybody before, had less than 2 years sober, and was a gay man. We had nothing in common except for alcoholism, except for if we don't do this work, we die. That's
Yeah.
what we had in common. That's what I wanted. He met, and I'm getting chills. Literally, I've got chills all over my arms because I remember it was hard for me. It took a day for me to be like, yeah, he needs to sponsor me because everything I had heard to that point was like they have to have what you want, all that messaging. But what it really is you have to find somebody that has availability for you.
For sure.
He came and picked me up every morning at 6:30 a.m. in his 1983 mailman Jeep from a sober living house, or he would come meet me at trap houses when I was still struggling
Wow.
because
Yeah.
that's how he stayed sober. And he came and picked me up every morning. We went to the basement of a movie theater that he managed, and we read the book and did what it said. That's it.
That's it. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, a good sponsor makes all the difference. There's some good literature put out by AE.org about sponsorship. I always encourage people to read the literature because there's a lot of guidance around there too. Because meetings and the program are two separate things, right? And the fellowship is, let's be fair, it's not the hotbed of mental health sometimes, right?
We're in it.
I'm telling you, yeah, this is not a t talking down type of thing. I'm like in the pit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there are some rules around rules of engagement to consider. And one of the things is that, yeah, the program and the meetings are two separate things, and it's the program that gets us sober, not the meetings, for sure. I'm curious, you have such a strong faith now. Did you grow up with religion and get away from it, or did you rediscover it when you got sober? What did that process look like for you?
Yeah, when I was 10 years old, and it was shortly after the Columbine tragedy, and I was
Mm,
in fourth grade, and I don't really know how to describe it better than I started understanding a presence. But my family didn't go to church, wasn't a thing really, and I didn't really know who to go to with it, but I knew that there was something else, right? And then I asked my one of my best friends at the time, him and I were having a sleepover at my house, asked him, he said, "All I know is we have to accept Jesus in our heart." And I was like, "How do we do that?" He's like, gotta get on our knees. Two 10-year-old boys in the basement of my mom's house facing
Oh,
each
say a little
other.
prayer.
Yeah, all he said was, "Do you accept Jesus in your heart?" And I said, "Yes." And I got the Holy Spirit goosebumps, for the
Yeah.
first time. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's it. That's it."
I'm
Yeah,
saved.
yeah. And then from that moment, that's when I started understanding. I never, even through my whole addiction, even through everything, I never doubted him, his presence.
Really?
Yeah. No, that was something I always doubted myself. I always shamed myself. I always thought that I wasn't good enough. I always thought that he couldn't love me. I never doubted that he was God, but how
Hmm.
could he care about me? That was my issue. And
Hmm.
that was a learning process for me because I had to learn that he loves me the same now that he ever will and ever
Hmm.
did. And
Right.
anything I do can't change that. And that's why I like when I say that I do everything for an audience of one, it's not to earn his love. That's not what it is. It's because I know that he put me here and I get to meet him. I get to see him and everything that he had for me here and all the ripple effects of all the things that I listened to and all that kind of stuff. I know someday I'm going to understand. And I think my addiction brought me closer to him because it taught me reliance on him that I don't think I could have understood without really going through something like that where nothing. I tried everything this planet has to offer to quit drugs. Tried everything, and I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
And then he came in the picture.
So did your faith in God come after you started going to meetings or
I had it the whole time. I always knew God was there. Do you mean like my
yeah.
faith, like I never doubted him. I doubted myself. It's really, what do you mean by faith?
Okay, so here's my hang up. Me and God broke up for
Yeah.
a while. We're all good now. But we broke up for a while because I grew up in the church and I really wanted to be good. I would have these spiritual experiences at church. I knew God
Yeah.
and also human, but I didn't know that the trauma that I experienced was affecting how I was behaving. So I was reaching for things. I didn't know it was related to my trauma till much later, much later. But I was always begging God to fix me, change me. I want to be good. I want to be good. I was always like, and I was still behaving in ways that were contrary to how I wanted to be, how I thought God wanted me to be. And after failing and failing, and after a while, I just gave up. I was like, fuck you, God. You're like, I asked you, I begged you to fix me. It's okay, this is a God-sized job. I can't fix me. And I just got so discouraged. And even in the days where I was drinking and using as an adult, right? And I would, even after we broke up, I would try to get back together with God type of thing. And yeah, I would just get so discouraged because it wasn't like I felt like I was doing everything that I could. I was asking, surrendering. So I was feeling like did everything. So I abandoned God because God wasn't doing his job. So it wasn't until yeah, you talk about hitting rock bottom. I felt like I skipped along rock bottom for a while,
Mm,
for a couple years probably.
yeah.
And it was the kind of rock bottom where I was like, do I even want to be here anymore? And I think the only thing that kept me on from taking action was I was raised with if you commit suicide, you'll go to hell. So that was like the thing that kept me from doing anything. But I put myself in dangerous situations all the time. So I don't know what happened. I get sick and tired of being sick and tired. I meet some people, I get sober, and I'm reintroduced to this idea of God. And so I had step two for me was all about redefining what this higher power was. Didn't have a gender, right? It was like and so I had to come to an understanding of what made sense for me. And then I think it was a combination of things, like just being sick and tired of being sick and tired. I shot all my angles and I was ready for however you want to define that. And then I was slowly reintroduced to spirituality.
Mm,
And that is something that has grown and developed over time. So it's interesting to talk to somebody because I feel like a lot of people really wrestle with this idea of a higher power, right? So I'm just curious, like, how did you reconcile it? Because it sounds like you went through a period of time where you were kind of like me, where you were asking for help, but you were still using. So how do you make sense of that?
Yeah, there was definitely seasons. There was a long season of me knowing that he could, but why would he for me? Because
Yeah, I
I'm
get that.
I'm this, yeah, this dirty,
I'm a terrible person.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a big part because I never lost my faith in him, who he is, what he did, all of that. That never left me. It just, I had to shift to where I understood his love for me personally.
Personally, yeah.
I have him within me, and it
Yeah.
never changed. And it
Mm.
doesn't matter what I do, because I always thought I had to earn him helping me. I have to go to 3 meetings today. I, I have to go to
Yeah.
church Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yeah.
And all of these plans were so tightly in my grasp, in my plan, that none of them could work because it made it so I couldn't listen to his plan. And
All
I
roads
think
lead to it was your fault.
I had to learn that he lives in peace. If I'm
Mm.
agitated, irritated, I'm in
Afraid.
here,
Yeah.
afraid, angry, resentful, all that stuff. I'm in here and I'm thinking about me.
Yeah.
It's hard to recognize that until you understand that any negative feeling you have will always come back to me somehow, right? And it's impossible to be present with God and me resentful, hatred, or anger and that kind of stuff at the same time. You can be angry and everything with him, being present with him and talking with him and understand, like just like letting everything go. That's what I had to learn. He lives in presence and peace. And my negative feelings are either in the past, in the future, somewhere else, right?
Yeah, I get that. I feel like as humans, we have like this negativity bias. We're trying to look for problems that could potentially hurt us, so we're problem solving a lot. And but it's hard when you're in pain and you're like, I need to get out of it. God, please help me. And you continue to use. That's a really tough place to be. So I'm curious, what happened 8.5 years ago that finally tipped the scale for you? Was it something specific? Do you feel like it was a combination of things? What finally tipped the scales for you that you could maintain your sobriety?
Yeah, it was a series of events. And I had been going to 12-step meetings every single day for months, every
Mhm.
single day, at least one, usually two. Bible study every Tuesday, church every Saturday, every Sunday, even went to the local MMA gym thinking they might be able to beat recovery into me, and
Like be
nothing would work.
physically exhausted.
Yeah,
Yeah, I get
yeah.
that.
And I was on probation, had to take UAs. I never passed one UA for probation.
Ooh.
Never passed one. They knew by the time I got sober, they knew and they just took me off. I never passed a UA for probation.
What happens when you fail a UA for probation? Don't they typically send you back to jail or something?
I got to a point where I was going in my probation officer with a 5-year sentence hanging over my head, begging him to put me in prison. I wasn't
Oh,
like, I wasn't hiding it. When I told you that I was calling and trying to get treatment, my
yeah.
probation officer and judge were trying to get me into treatment. Nobody would accept me.
Oh.
I was on probation in a
Why?
different,
Why wouldn't they accept you?
technically, this is what they told me is because I was technically a resident of Colorado and on probation in Montana. So the treatment centers, I would have had to get some kind of Medicaid that I couldn't get because I technically wasn't a resident, because I didn't have a house, because I was homeless. So I couldn't get the resources to go into treatment. Nobody would accept me.
Our
So
system is such a mess.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm in what I do now. So I'm doing all these things for months. And then on a Tuesday, I had used the day before and it was Bible study day. I was borrowing a car that this girl let me borrow, and It wasn't stolen, but I had to start it with a screwdriver. Yeah.
It was a jalopy.
Yeah. And I'm sitting in that before driving over to Bible study, and I realized that I have actually tried everything to stop. I have literally gone into my probation officer asking him to put me in prison so I could stop.
Yeah.
And I can't. So I sat back in the chair or in the seat in the car, and I audibly said to God, I said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to Bible study. I'm not going to meetings. I'm not going to church. Please just let me die.
Mm.
And remember when I did that about 5 years earlier and wrote the note to my mom, I don't think I was super serious about not wanting my life. I remember in that moment how honest I was being. I didn't want to be here anymore. Please
Yeah.
just take my life. Let me die. And right after I said that, I heard the voice, not audible from behind me or above me, but it's like it went right into my heart. And he said, it's time, go. And you would think you would get super excited and, oh my gosh, I heard the voice of God. But I got angry. I got upset because what's different about this time than all the other times it was time and I dumped all my dope in the toilet saying I'm never going to use again. And then I wake up in the morning and I pawn my TV. What's different about this time, God? So I start screaming at him and I'm hitting the roof of the car, like, what's different about this time? Please just let me die. And I'm crying and crying. And then I get through that. And then I sit back and I'm just crying and I hear him again and he just repeats himself. He said, it's time, go. And then when he repeated himself, I got something that I had never felt before, where all of my plans actually left me. And I was willing to do whatever he put in front of me to get sober because I realized at that moment there was nothing I could do of my
Mm.
power. Go to the Bible study. I'm 12 minutes late, open the doors. They're in the middle of prayer. And I drop down on my knees and I throw my hands up. I'm like, guys, please help me. I can't stop. I used again. Please help me. Please help me. Homeless, haven't showered in a while. Got to imagine they've been hearing this for months, right? My best friend Brendan, leading the Bible study, comes over. He's, hey, bud, let's just get through Bible study. And that was step 1 and 2. And then at the end of Bible study, Carmen, an elder that's in the group, came over to me and he said, hey, I just got a word. I need to pray for you. And for the first time in my life, someone sat me down on an ottoman in the middle of this room. Brendan and George were standing behind me. Everybody else had left. Carmen's in front of me. He puts his hand on my shoulder and he starts speaking to spirits, praying for me. In the name of Jesus, leave. And he's just pointing at me and speaking. And it's the first time in my life. You hear about these things. They're in the Bible. It tells us to do it at the end of the Gospels. And I'm feeling these things happening. I'm feeling things leaving me. My body is getting tight, and then shoulders are getting loosened, and things are happening, right? And then he finishes and leave. A few days later, still homeless. I know all that stuff was happening. Haven't used in 5 days. Crazy. Brendan comes and picks me up because while I was homeless, he would come pick me up from the streets, from the homeless shelter, and he would just take me to lunch, coffee, Bible study, church, whatever. Was just there with me, right? He takes me to IHOP to have breakfast. I am stoked that I have 5 days sober, right? I'm just talking, yeah, dude, I made it. I'm going to do this. I've got 5 days and eating French toast. And then I get a text message and open up my little flip phone and it's from my dope dealer. He's like, hey, bro, I just got some new stuff. It's fire. I'll give you a free 20 to try out. Right when I read it, I felt something going through the top of my head all the way through my body. My toes were tingling. My fingers were tingling. I lost my peripheral vision. All I could see was the phone. And then my thumbs just started texting back. And it was in King James. It was like, ye shall not text me again. Thou hast texted me for the last time. And it was going crazy. And then at the end of the text, I feel this thing leave me and go all the way from my toes, all the way up through my head. I was like, what the heck? And as I was typing that, I couldn't even read it. So I'm reading it. And I'm like, Brendan, that wasn't me. I was like, that wasn't me. And he was like, okay. He has no idea what's going on. I'm just having this crazy spiritual experience over here. And I push send. I close the phone. I'm like, dude, I don't know what that was. Put it in my pocket. And I look back up and Jesus is sitting across from me. It was totally different place, was out of the restaurant, All I could see was his face, big glow coming from behind him. He was smiling at me. And in that moment, the only thing I can compare it to is when I used to shoot up heroin. Like all the negative thoughts, all the sadness, all that stuff just immediately just goes away. But the difference in that moment, and this all happened within less than a second. The difference in that moment was as all that negative stuff left, at the exact same moment, I was flooded with an overwhelming sense of peace, of purpose, of identity, of the first time in my life, I had a sense of okayness. And I feel like only alcoholics understand that word, okayness. And immediately I just knew who it was, knew it was happening, fell off my face to the table, my hand up. I said, "Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God." Came back up. He was gone, back in the restaurant. Brendan sitting there like,
So are you okay?
yeah, yeah,
You're like, I'm so okay.
yeah. And then I'm of the faith, I believe that Jesus is able to heal like that. Disease, cravings, withdrawal, all that instantly. Did not happen for me. For the next 3 weeks, I am like shaking it. You have to imagine this is the first time I've had time away from a needle in years. So I'm shaking when I wake up, and like craving and withdrawals. And the only
Was
relief,
that your detox period? Like
yeah,
you were detoxing?
yep,
Okay.
yeah. I was detoxing for a while,
Were you?
but I didn't have a. I had to do this at a sober living house.
Yeah.
And then the only relief I would get was when I was actually sitting across from my sponsor doing the work, or if I was actually sitting writing my inventory. So you know what I did with all of my free time? The steps. What else do I have
Yeah.
to do?
Yeah.
And then on day 25, my sponsor came and picked me up in the morning, 6:30 a.m. in his 1983 mailman Jeep. And we go to the Rims in Billings, Montana, and I read him my fifth step.
Wow.
Nothing miraculous. Nothing miraculous happens. Go back, have the day, start my sixth and seventh. I go back, do the hour, all that kind of stuff. Next day, 6:30 a.m., he comes and picks me up. 1983 mailman Jeep. We're on our way to the movie theater. I'm looking over at this beautiful sunrise. And for the first time in my life since I was 12 years old, I had no desire to drink or use. And it has not come back. And since that
Wow.
day, because before that, I didn't think it was possible. I didn't think somebody like me could not have to use. From
Right.
that day on, I have known that it is my mission to help other people find that feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that beautiful story. It says in the big book, nothing ensures sobriety like intense work with another alcoholic.
Yep.
There is magic in that.
Amen.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. That is really beautiful. I feel like everybody needs to hear these stories of hope. Hope is hearing other people's experiences. And I know that there are people who are like us who tried over and over again and begged God for years and really struggled. And even then, there is hope.
Oh, yeah.
Even then, there is hope.
And the interesting thing for anybody that hasn't shut off because I said Jesus on a podcast,
I know.
the thing is, I've sponsored probably 70 to 80% of my sponsees have not been Christians. When I'm doing big book work, like I knew Jesus from 10 years old. I
Yeah.
read the Bible. I wrote my own 12-step program while banging meth, but there was, yeah, I knew God the whole time. But why was it that I couldn't get sober at church or Bible study? I'm well aware that something is there in the big book, in those steps, that works for anybody, no matter who God is to you. And
Yeah.
I make it very clear at the jump with sponsees that this process is going to introduce you to God. Whoever that is for you is perfect. I'm here to
Yeah.
witness that because I've sponsored an atheist that he would argue with me, argue and argue about the existence and everything. And then we're reading through, we agnostics. We're at a cafe sitting across from each other. And he's the whole time just, oh, that's BS, blah, 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 blah. And then at this one moment, he's putting his finger up to point at the book while he's going on a rant. And he stops and he looks up at me and he's like, I feel him. That's what we get from the big book. and from
Yeah.
intensive work, you
Yeah.
will have a spiritual experience. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter who God is to you, you will. Promise.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, there's a whole section called The Promises.
Yeah.
It's an amazing process. For me, the whole process kind of brought me back to the my childhood experience of God. And you've been using God in the he form. And I remember when I first got sober, I would put an S in a lot of the 12-step literature. It's written by a couple of guys from a Christian background. And but it worked. It was like for me, God was something that I really couldn't define. It wasn't gender oriented. And that's what I loved about 12 step. When I first started going, I kept hearing about all this God stuff. And I was talking to this girl and I was like, if this is what this is, I'm not going to be able to do it. And she was like, oh, don't even worry about it. That's not a thing. And I was like, what do you mean that's not a thing? And this is the exercise that we did. I talk about this all the time. So if you're listening and you've heard me say this, I'm so sorry. But she said, so she gave me a piece of binder paper and she drew a line and she said, just for funsies, if you could say all the attributes of God, what would you want it to be? So I was like, all powerful, all knowing, I'm the favorite, clearly, all loving, like non-judgmental, all that stuff. And then she's okay, what do you not want it to be? Like, what are some of the ideas that just repel you? And so I judgmental, condemning, whatever. So I just put a bunch of stuff. I don't even remember. And she was like, are you done? And I'm like, yeah, I'm done. She's okay, give me your paper. So I handed it to her and she ripped it in half. And she handed me to the good side and she's like, we'll just start with this. And I was like, that's it. She said, that's it. And so I was like, okay. So I was like, I got into it with the energy and all that stuff. So that stuff that's like, when people say to me that they're an atheist and they don't believe in God, and I was like, what are we talking about here? Because if you understand what energy is, that's what it is. I think it's the word. People have assigned meanings for a word. And I think the word God has been so distorted. Have you ever seen an image under several layers of glass that's totally distorted? Everybody puts on, I've heard it said that if you have a problem with God, you probably have a problem with someone else's God. And that was true for me. So I feel like I got lucky. I met these people right out of the gate that were like, to help me understand things that I was confused about. And God
Yeah.
was definitely one of the things I was confused about. So it was like a reintroduction to this idea of God, this higher power. The book says it's the whole purpose is to give you access to a higher power, right? So I love just hearing how people reconcile. And even my friends who I had this guy on my podcast twice that was an atheist. And when he was describing, he talks about values and attributes. And I was like, that's God.
Where did those come from?
Yeah. Funny you should say that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter what the word we use. It's I think the spirit that's behind it. I think what sort of used to hang me up, over the I've been sober a long time, and there are certain things that are just a struggle for me. I'm a little bit of a workaholic. I want certain things to happen, and this idea of God could and would if He were sought. And I know God can, but I don't know if God will.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where I struggle with. Please make it obvious.
Yeah.
Please make it obvious because I think sometimes that God puts a desire on my heart for a reason, but it's confusing to me because if I'm banging my head against the wall, then is this hard work or is this your will for me? So that's where it gets confusing sometimes, but I like what you said about making it a highway.
Desire, the root of desire is actually of the Father. That's what
Yeah.
desire means, is that the Father put it there because it's yours already.
Yeah, so then I fall back to it must not be in God's timing then, because sometimes things aren't happening and it's easy to get frustrated and discouraged.
Yeah.
So, yeah, trust in God's timing.
Yeah. Well, he's outside of time. I think that's pretty clear because he can show us something that we're
Yes.
going to have 20 years from now as if it's
Yeah.
there tomorrow. And then
Yeah.
alcoholics are like, why isn't it here yet? Because there's this
Yeah.
whole path I have to guide you through to make it funsies. So when you have it, you're like, wow, I worked on that. Could you imagine a
Yeah.
homeless 148-pound me? I'm 220 now. A homeless 148-pound me being told that he's going to beat the 6 minute mile, be able to bench press over 325 pounds, is going to do a TED Talk, be a best-selling author, run a nonprofit, own a 68-bed treatment center when I can't even get into treatment at the time. You think if he would have shown me all of that, I would have been able to take the next step? No, I would have been way too scared. I can't handle that. Just, I'm going to go ahead and just write my resentments down for now. Is that okay?
Yeah, baby steps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. I do want to ask you about your TED Talk because in the TED Talk you do show. Tell me a little bit about the TED Talk and why it was so powerful. Because as soon as I got an email from your publicist talking about your TED Talk and why it was so significant. Do you want to just tell the story?
In 2015, actually my sobriety date, exactly 2 years before my sobriety date, I was
Mm.
at my then girlfriend's house and I was hiding my drug habit from her. And I left the house, went around the corner, shot up what was supposed to be China white heroin. And I didn't feel anything. I thought it was bunk, got upset. Next thing I know, I'm waking up on a pile of glass on the asphalt, blue and red lights, cops, ambulance, all this stuff around me, and I'd overdosed. And then
Mm.
a few years later, I ended up getting the body cam footage of that. So I happen to be, I think, the only person that did a TED Talk where they show their own dead body in the talk. And then they're like, surprise, I survived.
I survived.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 years. Yeah, 2 years. So it was 2 years between that time and when you got sober.
Yep. November 6th, 2015 is when that happened. November 6th,
Mm.
2017 is when I got sober. November 6th, 2019 is when I published my book and it became a bestseller.
Wow, November 6th is a good date for you.
Yeah, I try to do something on November 6th. And I people celebrate their sobriety dates. I celebrate it by doing something I can give back with, like something where I'm giving it to others. The
Yeah.
first one was for me. I could not believe that I had just made a year. That was just crazy to me. And it took a lot of
Yeah.
work. And then, since I got that one, I started trying to do something each year where someone else is going to get helped.
Yeah, I love that, giving back. I've heard some people be like, yeah, give it $1 for every year that you've been sober. A fun one too. Listen, thank you so much for sharing that. And I know you're doing a lot of work to try to help others. How can people find you? What kind of service work do you do?
recoveredonpurpose.org. That's my nonprofit. We have a 50 state resource guide for Medicaid or Medicaid eligible people for rehabs. So nobody has to be on a
Wonderful.
trap house floor on Christmas looking for help. All the applications are there for you as well. And then behavioralhealth.partners. I help people open and market treatment centers. So yeah, that's what I do. And then we have a 68-bed full continuum treatment center in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So we've got detox, inpatient, outpatient, and we're building sober living. So if anybody needs treatment, we're in network. I don't really understand all the insurance and everything, but yeah, we would love to help.
You're trying to make it accessible to as many people as possible.
Yeah, so we actually specifically made it. So we are working with Medicaid also,
Nice.
and it's the hardest thing to work with. You
I
would
can't
think
imagine
Yeah, you would think that
the
the
red
people that
tape.
need it most, yeah, the people that need it most, actually, it's just very difficult system. But we allocated minimum 20% so that even if they don't pay us, we made the business model work.
Okay. I
Yeah,
love that. Yeah, you're doing such important work. Thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. I'll leave links to everything in the show notes at odatchat.com. But Adam, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for all of your work that you're doing.
thanks so much for having me. Good talking to you.
One more thing before you go, I just want to take a minute to say thank you for listening all the way to the end. And thank you for sharing this episode with the people in your life that you care about. Thank you for leaving a review on Apple because you're the type of person who supports people that support you. Thank you for doing that for me and for all our guests. Have a beautiful day, and I'll be here to welcome you on the next episode.